Startups in India often face several legal issues while operating and growing their business. Some common legal issues that these startups often face in India. Today, I'm going to be talking about that and throwing light upon them based on few examples that we understand that may just happen as a part of business and maybe realized at a latter point that these are issues that should have been paid attention to at the inception or while setting up or while setting a foundation stone for your startup or business and then accordingly run it. There may be other legal issues that may be happening while the growing tenure of a startup, and those are something that we would also touch upon and understand. So, at the inception, something that a startup faces and would need to comply with are incorporation and registration requirements, whether a private limited, a company, partnership, limited liability partnership. This process may involve various documentation, obtaining necessary licenses, adhering to Companies Act, and this is one legal aspect that is crucial for setting up any kind of startup. Then, intellectual property protection is another aspect that these startups need to take care of, whether it is patents, trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets. It is crucial for any startup to get their IP registration and take necessary steps to prevent infringement or unauthorized use of their intellectual property. For example, if any startup fails to patent its product, then that product can be used by other larger rivals who already have an infrastructure in place. They may copy and manufacture them at a cheaper cost, putting all those efforts from inception that were taken and going in vain. One very important aspect for which a startup eventually comes into being and requires from the inception is the fundraising part. Startups require these external fundings to grow their business. They need to comply with legal and regulatory framework governing fundraising activities, the Securities and Exchange Board of India, SEBI regulations, foreign investment regulations, anti-money laundering laws. In India, startup funding may be easy as well as complicated. When I say easy, it may mean that sometimes the process may just go through and it may be easier for a startup to raise those kind of funds, but at the same time complicated because there are a lot of processes that are involved from the inception. Right from a very traditional business point of view, analyzing profit and loss, balance sheets. Therefore, startups must be very careful with this data. Another important aspect for any startup to take care of are the employment and labor laws, including minimum wage requirements, employee benefits, workplace safety regulations, protection against discrimination. It is essential to have all of these employment contracts, policies, and procedures in place as a major part of day-to-day working of any kind of startups. And talking of contractual arrangements, one thing that a startup must always remember is that on a going basis and while running of a business, there are multiple and numerous kind of agreements that any startup may be having with its vendor, customers, investors, partners, and drafting and negotiating legally binding contracts while safeguarding interests of a startup is crucial for any kind of avoidance of future disputes and legal liabilities by such entities. With changing times and different nature of works and ways of running business, startups must also ensure data protection and privacy policies are in place. There are different ways of following data protection laws for any kind of startup or entity in India. The Personal Data Protection Bill, which is soon expected to become law in India, states certain rules and regulations that must be understood by a startup and may be made a part of day-to-day measures through policies and contracts. This may include things like having protection measures, obtaining user consent, handling data breaches effectively. An effective privacy policy agreement is very, very important for any kind of startup on how they share their data or sell it to third parties. Talking of Startups and legal, one important aspect that every startup must comply, and this is something that will go on till the life of any kind of entity, are the taxation and regulatory compliances. Complying with income tax, GST, which is the goods and services tax, and any other applicable taxes, filing appropriate accounting records, filing tax returns, and other regulatory compliances, keeping your chartered accountant, company secretary, and legal all in collaboration with each other, and having a joint effort to ensure all these things are in place is very important. From a legal point of view, startups should also be mindful of competition law provisions and not engage in any anti-competitive practices. These may basically include practices such as price fixing, abuse of dominant market position, or unfair trade practices. Competition Act 2002 in India provides crucial details and provisions for startups operating in India, and compliance is a must. We discussed about a startup having contractual arrangements and privacy policies in place, and keeping up with newer times, it is equally important for every startup to address any kind of cybersecurity threats and protect their own systems, networks, user data from any unauthorized access or data breaches. For this, implementing a robust security provision and complying with applicable cybersecurity laws is quintessential. Also, last but not the least, to summarize, there may be a lot of evolving legal and regulatory changes in the entire landscape in any jurisdiction or country. There may be changes in policies, rules, regulations that can impact operations and compliance requirements of startups. Hence, adapting to them quickly and ensuring an ongoing compliance and being in such an environment where these regulatory changes are taken care of from a legal perspective is very important for any newly established business. Hence, by understanding all these legal requirements that may be required by a startup, inclusive of contractual arrangements, taxation, employment, labor, regulatory compliances, we understand that it is important for startups to protect their interests, maintain these compliances. This is very crucial for them to build trust, have investor confidence, to attract the right kind of investors, and also avoid any kind of red flags and legal issues that could impede their growth and success in any manner. Hence, it is advisable for startups to consult with legal professionals to ensure that they understand and fulfill these legal obligations effectively.
कुछ बातों का मतलब, कुछ मतलब की बातें, क्या मतलब?